Recently, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced his proposal visit to China on a business delegation. This will make him the first G7 leader to travel there since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. His visit to China will be a part of a trip to Southeast Asia, during which he's expected to showcase a tougher attitude towards Beijing and its record of human rights violations. Scholz will visit China shortly, and preparations are at an advanced stage for this important trip. This trip comes as President Xi Jinping announced a third term in office on Saturday to cement his place as one of China's strongest ever leaders. In addition, this trip could signal how Germany and the EU at large plan to deal with China. In other words, it seems like the EU, led by Germany, will be taking a more rigid stance towards Xi's government. What is the importance of this visit? What do Germany and the EU hope to achieve with this visit? Why is the visit coming at this time? Let's find out. Welcome to my channel. Today, we'll be taking a look at Olaf Scholz's planned visit to China and the reasons for it, and its implications. Over the past few years, relations between the EU member states and China have continued to deteriorate, which is directly related to a number of issues. China has a long record of human rights violations, which is made worse by the response of President to sanctions imposed on China due to human rights violations. China's countermeasures to EU sanctions on human rights, economic coercion, and China's position on the war in Ukraine have been major causes of issues between the EU countries and the Chinese government. The human rights situation in China has continued to worsen. Many human rights lawyers and activists have reported harassment and intimidation, unfair trials, arbitrary and lengthy detention, and even torture for simply expressing their right to freedom of expression and other human rights. China has many records of human rights violations, and one of the latest came in 2021. The government launched a campaign of political indoctrination, arbitrary mass imprisonment, torture, and forced cultural assimilation against Muslims living in Xinjiang. Thousands of Uyghur children were separated by their parents during this period. Furthermore, extreme measures were taken by the government to prevent free communications, independent investigations, and accurate reporting. Travel was restricted in the regions of Xinjiang. These policies implemented by the Chinese government clearly violate multiple human rights, particularly the rights to liberty, freedom of movement, opinion, and expression. These abuses against Muslims have been going on since 2017. The government introduced internment camps to re-educate people, which was simply a way of torturing people until they renounced their religious beliefs. Tibet also witnessed its fair share of human rights abuses by the Chinese government. A Tibetan monk, Rinchen Sultrim, was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months imprisonment for expressing political views on his social media account. Furthermore, the Chinese government has imposed tighter controls on the Special Administrative Region of Hong Kong. This started with the reduction of directly elected seats in the Legislative Council elections in Hong Kong and the need for all legislative candidates to be vetted by the National Security Police before being able to contest. The National Security Law was introduced in 2020 and further enabled human rights violations. This directly resulted in the disbandment of over 60 civil society organizations. These are only a few of the human rights violations committed by China. Other challenges posed by China have also contributed to the worsening relations with the EU. China continues its strategy to try to edge ahead of the West in science, technology, and many other aspects. The Chinese government has continued its strategy of propelling China towards self-reliance and making China one of the strongest militaries in the world. China stands as the largest exporter of many important goods globally. Given their economic power and atrocities, China is both a rival and an economic power to the EU. However, how the EU handles relations with China is very important. In addition, tensions between China and Taiwan have begun to rise in the past few months, and numerous experts have predicted that war could come sooner rather than later. China has engaged in several provocations against Taiwan, including sending warships across the Taiwan Strait's median line. Although the US has responded by sending warships of its own, China still aims to one day take control of Taiwan. The Chinese government still considers Taiwan an ethnic part of the People's Republic of China and believes that ultimately it should be reunited as part of China. Reports have emerged that the Chinese president has directed the People's Liberation Army to be prepared to invade the island by 2027. China's 2019 crackdown on democracy in Hong Kong tarnished Beijing's one country, two systems model for a possible political settlement involving Taiwan. Though China has not publicly supported Russia, its lack of clear support and its past relations with Russia have led many to believe that they are supporting Russia, albeit not openly. In the invasion of Ukraine, China's position has been unclear, and Beijing has refused to condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine and has opposed economic sanctions against Russia. These and many other issues are believed to be the focus of the German Chancellor's trip to China. Germany is now taking a more hawkish approach towards tackling China. Speaking at the United Nations last week, Olaf Scholz denounced China's human rights record and called on Beijing to implement the recommendation of a recent report on the treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang by the former High Commissioner for Human Rights, which accused China of serious violations there. Scholz will take that message to Beijing and will do all it takes to seek the cooperation of the president, even if it results in worsening relations between the two countries. China has always been a major headache for the EU and the West generally. Due to deteriorating relations with China, the EU passed a report on a new EU-China strategy in September 2021. The new strategy is based on 6 objectives: cooperation on global challenges, engagement in international norms and human rights, identifying risks and vulnerabilities, building partnerships with like-minded partners, fostering strategic autonomy, and defending the EU as a geopolitical actor and its interests on the global stage. The EU report stipulates that their new strategy will involve China in dialogues that address global challenges. On human rights, the EU condemns sanctions imposed by Chinese authorities, which reduce trust and hinder bilateral cooperation. The EU also recognizes the political, social, technological, and economic risks associated with China. China holds an economic grip over the EU, as many EU countries depend on China in certain strategically critical sectors, including pharmaceutical supplies. Furthermore, several concerns have been raised about security issues, including cyber attacks, cyber espionage, and disinformation campaigns. China has also been accused of intellectual property theft in its quest to surpass Western countries in the area of technology, and this has raised many eyebrows within the EU. The bottom line is that the EU plans to reduce risks related to undesired dependencies while maintaining important relations with China. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's visit to China is part of a new strategy to tackle China in light of recent issues. The Chinese visit would come on top of Scholz to attend the Group of 20 summit in Bali in mid-November, which will include a large business delegation with stops in Vietnam and Singapore. In addition, the German government is working to hone a national strategy on China that aims to ensure less reliance on them, especially in the wake of the recent energy crisis caused by Germany's over-reliance on Russia for gas. Germany plans to diversify supply chains and also tackle security issues in the region, considering China's increased tensions with Taiwan. This new strategy represents a shift in tone for Europe's largest economy, which had maintained trade ties with China under Scholz's predecessor Angela Merkel, and brings in more in line with the US and other Western allies who have raised increasing concern over China. Moreover, last month, Germany's economic minister Robert Habeck pledged no more naivety in working with China, referencing China's human rights record. He announced that his team was working on an economic policy to reduce dependence on China and scrutinize investment from them. These issues will be discussed by Scholz during his visit to China in a bid to secure China's cooperation in tackling human rights issues. The time of the trip is unclear. However, per speculations, it should be sometime between November 3rd to the 4th. French President Emmanuel Macron has also stated that he's considering a trip by the end of the year. Although the intentions of Olaf Scholz's visit to China are clear and probably in the best interests of the EU, it has not come without some form of criticism. Some other EU leaders have slammed the planned trip, believing that such unilateral diplomacy could derail from the EU's desire to speak to China with one voice. A united front is the best way to deal with China, and several EU leaders like Estonian Prime Minister have shown disapproval towards this proposed visit by the German Chancellor. Do you think Olaf Scholz's visit will be effective in tackling China? Do you think the EU can reduce its dependence on China? How strong must the EU be in dealing with China? Let me know in the comments section down below.